Do you think leprechauns are just cheerful little men in green suits who hide pots of gold at the end of rainbows? What if I told you that the smiling mascot on your cereal box, the playful character in children's stories, and the laughing figure on St. Patrick's Day decorations are all carefully crafted masks for something much darker? The truth about leprechauns has been systematically erased, sanitized, and replaced with a friendly fiction that serves a purpose few understand. The earliest accounts of what we now call leprechauns appear in medieval Irish manuscripts, but these weren't the jolly cobblers of modern imagination. They were classified among the Fir Diarg, the Red Men, solitary, malevolent fairy creatures known for their cruelty and vindictive nature. The transformation of this entity into something benign is not accidental. It's a deliberate obfuscation that's been ongoing for centuries. The first documented modern encounter occurred in 1837 in County Cork, Ireland. Local records mention a farmer named Seamus O'Malley who disappeared for 3 days after claiming to have captured a wee man in red. When O'Malley returned, he was missing 3 fingers from his right hand. He refused to speak of what happened. His neighbors reported hearing strange laughter from his property for weeks afterward. O'Malley's farm failed the following season. His livestock died mysteriously, and he was found hanging from his barn rafters exactly 1 year later. The official report cited suicide due to financial troubles. No investigation followed. Throughout the 1840s, during the Great Famine, reports of strange small figures increased dramatically across rural Ireland. Desperate, starving people spoke of encounters with beings who offered food or wealth in exchange for small services. Those who accepted were never seen again. Those who refused often found their families suffering accelerated starvation. Parish records from the time document at least 17 cases where people claimed to have made deals with the little folk before vanishing. Authorities dismissed these as delusions brought on by hunger or attempts to explain abandonment during desperate times. What's particularly notable is how the descriptions changed during this period. Earlier accounts consistently described red-clothed malevolent beings. By the mid-19th century, green clothing became more common in reports. This wasn't a natural evolution of folklore. It was the beginning of a systematic rebranding. In 1853, British folklorist William Toms published The Fables and Fairy Tales of the Irish Peasantry, which presented the first sanitized version of leprechaun stories. Toms worked for the British Museum, but had suspicious connections to several occult societies active in London at the time. His manuscript notes, sealed until 1972 and now mysteriously missing from the British Library archives, reportedly contained much darker accounts than what he published. A librarian who viewed these notes before their disappearance described them as troubling accounts of blood rituals and parasitic entities, rather than the whimsical tales Toms presented to the public. The commercialization and sanitization accelerated in the early 20th century, particularly in America. The transformation from malevolent entity to lucky charm was nearly complete by the 1920s. This period coincides with a sharp decrease in reported encounters, not because the phenomenon ceased, but because reporting changed. People who experienced something that didn't match the new, cheerful narrative were dismissed, ridiculed, or diagnosed with various mental disorders. In 1924, folklorist and paranormal investigator Algernon Blackwood traveled to Western Ireland to investigate persistent rumors of fair folk activity. His expedition journals, published posthumously in a limited edition, described discovering a series of small, perfectly circular chambers beneath an ancient dolmen. Inside, he found tiny handprints pressed into the clay walls, but not the handprints of children. The fingers were too long, the palms too narrow. Most disturbing was Blackwood's description of the ceiling, which he wrote was covered in miniature writing in no language known to man, alongside drawings depicting unmistakable human suffering. Blackwood abandoned his investigation after 3 members of his team reported seeing small figures watching them from the surrounding forest. His journals end abruptly with the cryptic line, "They are not what we think they are. They never were. God help us for our ignorance." The academic community dismissed Blackwood's findings as creative fiction. The chambers he discovered were allegedly destroyed by a landslide in 1926, though no geological records confirm this event occurred. The pattern of encounter, investigation, and subsequent disappearance or discrediting continued through the 20th century. In 1947, anthropologist Margaret Calloway began researching correlations between leprechaun folklore and missing persons cases in Irish immigrant communities across the northeastern United States. After 6 months of investigation, she presented her preliminary findings to colleagues at Boston University, suggesting a statistical anomaly in disappearances around March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, particularly among children and the elderly. Her academic career ended abruptly when she was committed to Danvers State Hospital for delusional paranoia. Hospital records indicate she repeatedly claimed she was being watched by something small that hides in the shadows. Calloway died 3 months later of unexplained liver failure. Her research notes were destroyed in a small office fire before they could be reviewed by colleagues. The 1950s and 60s saw the complete commercialization of the leprechaun image, coinciding with broader efforts to sanitize fairy tales for children. What few realize is that the sanitization of these stories serves a specific purpose. It creates blind spots in our collective perception. We've been conditioned to laugh at what we should fear. In 1972, during the height of the Troubles in Northern Ireland, a construction crew uncovered an unusual site while excavating for a new housing development near Belfast. Worker testimonies describe finding a circular stone chamber 20 feet below ground, containing small skeletons initially thought to be children's remains. Forensic examiner Dr. James Harrington noted anomalies that weren't made public. The proportions were wrong, the limbs too long, the eye sockets too large, the teeth unlike anything in the medical literature. Before thorough documentation could occur, the site was sealed by government officials citing archaeological significance. No findings were ever published, and the housing project was relocated. Harrington resigned his position shortly afterward and disappeared while hiking in the Mourne Mountains. His body was never recovered. Throughout the 1980s, the pattern continued with isolated reports across Ireland, Scotland, and areas with significant Irish diaspora populations. In 1983, the small fishing village of Dunquin on Ireland's Dingle Peninsula experienced a bizarre series of events beginning on March 10th and ending precisely on March 17th. 7 children reported seeing a small man with long fingers, watching them from the rocks near the harbor. Adults dismissed their claims until livestock began dying. Goats, sheep, and cattle found with precise, bloodless incisions. On the morning of the 17th, 2 children failed to appear for breakfast. The village organized a search party that found nothing. At sunset, the missing children walked out of the sea, unharmed and with no memory of the previous week. Both suffered from unexplained anemia requiring hospitalization. Neither would approach the water again. When interviewed by local police, both children drew identical pictures of a small humanoid figure with elongated limbs and oversized eyes. The case was never officially resolved. American folklorist Dr. Ellen Marsh investigated the Dunquin incident in 1987, connecting it to similar occurrences across Ireland's western coast. Her research paper, submitted to the Journal of Folk Studies, was rejected without explanation. Marsh continued her investigations privately until 1989, when she reportedly began experiencing home intrusions by something small that moved too quickly to be seen clearly. After installing cameras, she captured what she described as footage of a humanoid entity approximately 3 feet tall, moving with impossible speed. This footage has never been made public. Marsh's research ended when her home burned down in 1990, reportedly due to electrical issues. She survived but refused to discuss her work afterward, changing careers to become an accountant. The pattern becomes clearer when you examine global folklore. Similar entities appear in Benuishu, cultures worldwide, from the Japanese Koropaguru to the Hawaiian Menehune, from Scandinavian Tomta to Germanic kobolds. The descriptions vary, but key elements remain consistent: Small humanoid entities with magical abilities, connections to Earth or underground dwellings, and ambivalent or hostile attitudes toward humans. This isn't cultural diffusion, it's multiple cultures encountering the same phenomenon and interpreting it through their cultural lens. What's most disturbing is how modern media has been weaponized to obscure the truth. The 1993 horror film Leprechaun seemingly attempted to reconnect to the malevolent original nature of these entities, but was quickly undermined by its descent into camp and parody. This is the pattern. Any attempt to present the reality is quickly diluted, ridiculed, or transformed into entertainment. The very title of this video will likely cause some viewers to dismiss it immediately as fiction or clickbait. That reaction is programmed. It's what they want. The most compelling evidence comes from Ireland's western coast, where traditional knowledge hasn't been entirely erased. In these communities, certain protective practices persist without their practitioners fully understanding why. Iron horseshoes are still placed above doors, Rowan crosses are still made on certain days of the year, salt is still scattered across thresholds. These aren't quaint superstitions, they're survival techniques developed through centuries of encounters. In 2003, cultural anthropologist Sean Murphy spent 6 months in these coastal communities, recording oral histories from elderly residents. His subjects spoke of the agreement, an unwritten pact that most couldn't fully explain but all respected. It involved leaving small offerings, maintaining certain boundaries, and never breaking specific taboos. Murphy noted that while many couldn't articulate what would happen if the agreement was broken, their fear was palpable and consistent. After returning to Dublin, Murphy began organizing his findings for publication. 3 weeks later, he was found dead in his office. The official cause was listed as aneurysm. His research materials disappeared. His family reported that in the days before his death, Murphy had become paranoid, claiming he was being watched and followed by something he couldn't clearly see. The pattern continues to the present day. Between 2008 and 2019, Irish police records show 27 cases classified as unexplained disappearances along the western coastal counties. 13 occurred within 3 days of March 17th. 6 of the missing were later found with no memory of where they had been. 4 returned with unexplained physical changes, rapid weight loss, anemia, strange markings on their skin. None would speak about their experiences. The remaining 17 were never found. In 2017, marine biologist Dr. Fiona Kelly was conducting research on tidal pools near the cliffs of Feed Moher when she photographed what she initially believed to be a child standing among the rocks. Upon review, the proportions were clearly wrong, the limbs too long, the head too large. When she returned to the site the following day, she found a complex pattern of symbols carved into the rocks that hadn't been there before, symbols that matched those in Blackwood's journals from 1924. Kelly reported her findings to both university colleagues and local authorities. No official investigation followed. 3 months later, Kelly resigned her position after reporting multiple home intrusions and whispering voices at night. She currently lives in New Zealand and refuses all contact with researchers or journalists regarding her experience. The most recent documented case occurred in Boston's Irish-American community in March 2023. 7-year-old Michael Collins disappeared from his bedroom on March 15th. Security cameras showed no entry or exit from the house. Exactly 7 days later, Collins reappeared in his room, severely dehydrated and anemic, but otherwise unharmed. When questioned, the boy would only say he had been underground with the small people and that they wanted him to stay forever. The Collins family relocated to Arizona shortly afterward. The case file remains open but inactive. What connects these incidents across time and geography isn't just the similarity of the entities described, but the consistent pattern of suppression, ridicule, and rewriting that follows. The transformation of a feared entity into a commercialized, friendly mascot isn't cultural evolution, it's deliberate obfuscation. Think about what happens to those who maintain the original understanding of what leprechauns truly are. They're dismissed as superstitious, backward, or mentally unstable. Consider the timing. St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, appears repeatedly in these accounts. Modern celebrations involve alcohol consumption that impairs perception and memory. The color green dominates, camouflaging what might be hiding in plain sight. Crowds gather, making individual disappearances less immediately noticeable. The whole celebration creates perfect conditions for something to operate unseen. The commodification serves another purpose beyond concealment. The more ubiquitous the friendly leprechaun image becomes, the more protection it offers to the real entity. Imagine trying to report seeing a leprechaun today. You'd be laughed out of any police station, doctor's office, or newsroom. The ridicule is a shield that allows something to hide behind cultural expectations and disbelief. But what are they? The consistent elements across centuries of encounters suggest something ancient that has evolved alongside human civilization, adapting its methods of concealment to each era. The earliest accounts describe direct encounters. As human knowledge and documentation improved, the entities became more cautious, operating from shadows, using intermediaries, and eventually hiding behind their own commercialized image. What do they want? The pattern of disappearances, blood, and anemia points to something parasitic rather than merely malevolent. The ancient accounts of deals and bargains suggest a transactional relationship. They take something vital, blood, life force, time, and occasionally offer something in return. But the exchange is never equal. The missing research, disappeared investigators, and systematic suppression of evidence point to something with influence beyond what a simple cryptid or undiscovered species would have. The entities appear to have defenders, collaborators, or perhaps unwitting agents in positions of authority. The pattern is too consistent to be coincidental. Are you still watching? Have you been laughing at this ridiculous conspiracy theory? That reaction protects them. Your disbelief is their strongest shield. They've spent centuries cultivating it. Consider this. When was the last time you saw a realistic depiction of these creatures in media? Not the cartoonish figures on cereal boxes or holiday decorations, but something that matches the original descriptions from medieval accounts? The elongated limbs, the oversized eyes, the abnormal teeth, the predatory nature. These elements have been systematically removed from our cultural consciousness. The most disturbing aspect is how the truth hides in plain sight. The horror movie franchise that began in 1993 contains elements of genuine folklore that somehow made it through the cultural filters. The obsession with gold, the granting of wishes with terrible consequences, the vindictive nature. But these elements were presented as fiction, as entertainment, ensuring that anyone connecting them to real experiences would be dismissed. What's happening now? Reports continue, but rarely reach mainstream attention. Between 2015 and 2024, the patterns remain consistent. Disappearances near traditional dates, unexplained encounters in areas with historical connections, and the subsequent silence of witnesses. Social media has made it easier for experiences to be shared, but harder for them to be taken seriously. Any account is immediately categorized as creepypasta, fiction, or attention-seeking. The perfect camouflage has been created, a world where the truth is automatically assumed to be fiction. In 2021, a Reddit thread in R Paranormal detailed an encounter near Galway that matches historical patterns precisely. A small humanoid figure observed near an ancient stone formation, followed by electronic disturbances, home intrusions, and ultimately the poster's decision to leave Ireland entirely. The thread was removed within 48 hours for violating community guidelines. The user account was deleted. Attempts to contact them through other means have failed. I've been researching this phenomenon for 7 years. I've compiled over 300 accounts spanning 4 centuries. I've interviewed witnesses, examined police records, and visited sites of reported activity. 3 people who provided key information for this investigation have ceased all contact. One explicitly stated they were being watched before disappearing from social media entirely. I've received anonymous emails containing nothing but coordinates leading to remote locations in Western Ireland. Twice, I've found small footprints outside my home, too small for a child with abnormal toe spacing. Last March, I set up motion-activated cameras around my property. On the morning of March 17th, All cameras failed simultaneously for exactly 3 hours and 17 minutes. When they reactivated, a pattern was drawn in the soil beneath my bedroom window, a spiral with symbols matching those in both Blackwood's journal and the markings photographed by Dr. Kelly in 2017. I didn't approach it. I photographed it from my window. By evening, rain had washed it away. I'm not publishing my name with this information for obvious reasons. I've arranged for this research to be released through third parties who don't know my identity. If something happens to me, at least this information will survive. What should you do with this knowledge? First, understand that awareness offers some protection. Throughout the historical record, those who recognized the danger and took traditional precautions fared better than those who remained ignorant. Iron, salt, rowan wood, and strict boundaries appear repeatedly as defensive measures in accounts from witnesses who survived encounters. Second, be particularly vigilant during the week surrounding March 17th. The pattern of activity spikes dramatically during this period, with the highest concentration of disappearances occurring on the day itself. If you live in areas with Irish heritage or historical connections, particularly coastal regions or locations with ancient stone structures, your risk may be higher. Third, and most importantly, if you encounter something small that doesn't move quite right, that doesn't look quite human despite its size and shape, do not engage, do not make deals, do not accept offerings, do not follow it, no matter how curious you become or what it promises you. Countless disappearances begin with someone following a small figure just to see where it goes. The true nature of leprechauns, or whatever these entities actually are, remains hidden behind centuries of deliberate cultural manipulation. The cheerful, green-clothed figures of modern imagery serve as perfect camouflage for something ancient and predatory that continues to operate in the shadows of our disbelief. You may dismiss everything you've just heard. You've been conditioned to do exactly that. But tonight, when you turn off the lights, when you find yourself alone in the dark, listen carefully. That subtle scratching might be just the house settling. That whispered voice might be just the wind. That quick movement at the corner of your vision might be nothing at all. But now you know what might be hiding behind the mask of your disbelief. Now you know what watches from the shadows. Now you know why they turned something feared into something laughed at. And now they know that you know. If you've made it to the end of this video, type, "I see them now," in the comments. Not because it's just engagement, but because I need to track how many people this information reaches before something happens to stop it. Share this with others, not for popularity, but because knowledge shared is harder to erase. The more who know, the harder it becomes for them to maintain their carefully constructed facade. They're watching, always watching, waiting for you to forget or dismiss what you've learned, waiting for the moment when your guard drops and the boundary between their world and yours thins enough for them to slip through. Remember,